Go.
Good morning, it's Jim in beautiful Beaverton, Oregon. So it's a beautiful morning right now, although we've had a terrible drought here the last few weeks. One reason why we added this stream to the fish pond. Here you might see, just passing, a beautiful pickerel plant bloom. So some of the plants have been burned pretty bad by it, but I think we're getting through it okay. So anyhow, what I wanted to do today was talk to you about 3 different ways you might set up a home aquaponics system. So we're going to start with a very simple way you might do it, or you might already have a lot of this stuff, and that's just with a pond. So if you have a little pond, or you want to put in a little pond, if you pretend this doesn't go anywhere but right here and it's just a little pond, and you maybe have a little pump in there with a waterfall and stuff, and just real basic setup, but you can put plants in there that are edible. The pickerel plant, according to the internet, is edible. Don't eat it because I said eat it. Find a professional to tell you to eat it, but it is indeed supposedly an edible plant. The seeds right here, when they're dry, apparently you can eat them, and also small shoots. But again, I've never eaten it. I just read about it. So as you see here, we have a water lily that's doing wonderfully. It starts blooming in the afternoon, so you can't see it until it gets too hot. And in the back, the water hawthorn is just starting to come out. It's fall. So anyhow, we have big catfish down in the bottom of there that only comes up in the morning to eat worms out of my hands. But what you have here is a basic aquaponics system. You have a relationship between the fish in the pond and these plants that get all of their nutrients from the pond. So you don't, that's it, there's one right there. Now we're going to kind of expand on all this. Let's say you want to put in a grow bed, or maybe you have a little greenhouse and then you put in a pond, or you have both, you could connect the two. So with the addition of a grow bed and a little greenhouse, now all of a sudden you have a pretty nice little system. And you could build all this, if you had it in the greenhouse or the pond, you could build the other one at a weekend and you'd have a nice little setup. What you need to remember is that you're going to have this in the summer, the spring, and the winter, so you have to be prepared for cold weather. Your fish, if they're in a pond, need to be the kind of fish that can take cold weather. Other than that, you can just kind of shut it up. So anyhow, if you want to get a little more complicated, let's walk around this way. You can see a lot of these trees have been burned by the hot weather. They're going into fall a little bit on the early side. Here we have rosemary that I pulled out of the greenhouse and planted, and it just grows like a weed for some reason, which is kind of nice. Anyhow, let's go on inside. 72 degrees in here right now. It's wonderful. So if you take the same basic setup that I have out there with a grow bed and a fish tank and do it several different times, you kind of have this setup. So we start here with a sump, which in this case is all underground. I dug a hole and buried the whole thing, 150 gallons, and there's a pump in there, and the pump pumps water up out of there. The water pumps into these pipes, and I have a choice of how much goes through to each of these 3 tanks. So then basically one of these pipes goes to each one of these 3 tanks. They look like they might cascade into each other. In fact, at one time I thought that would be a wonderful thing to do, but I've discovered now that it would not have been a wonderful thing to do, because what you want is redundancy. Let's say you're growing these fish to eat. You don't want to harvest all the fish in your tank and then have no fish, so you need several different tanks. Or in this case, with one tank that doesn't have anything in it, I can clean one tank out, move the fish, and so on, and I can clean all these tanks out in very short order. So that's an important factor. And same on the other side where the grow beds are. All we're doing is running a water line out to there. We split it off one valve to each grow bed, So if I want to shut this one off from all the rest for whatever reason, I just turn that valve and bingo, it's shut off. If I want to drain it, I just unscrew the bottom, drain it, and then I can completely take it out and clean it. You'll notice I don't use a swirl filter in this unit. Almost all the aquaponics systems you'll see will have some kind of swirl filter or something to take solids out. I set these up like aquariums and I take solids out with a net, but if I want to clean it, if one of these should need cleaning, I can turn it off, take the whole thing out and clean it and put it back in a couple hours. So anyhow, this is a more complicated system. That's 3 systems you might think about doing. So in conclusion, the tip of the day has absolutely nothing to do with any of this, but I thought it was sort of interesting anyhow. About a week ago, I bought an e-bike. Most of you, everybody knows what e-bike is, no doubt. Anyhow, I was worried about whether I could ride it or not, and would it be worth it and all that stuff, and instantly upon getting it, I discovered it was worth it and it's wonderful. So the tip of the day is if you're thinking about doing something like getting an e-bike and you just can't quite get yourself to do it, just go ahead and do it. It'll probably work out well. We'll see you next week.